Shares in Aritzia leaping today to a new record high. Let's get more from Bloomberg's Stephanie Hughes. Stephanie.
Hey, Andy. Yeah, so Aritzia was by far the top TSX performer today, rising by over 17% today, which was its biggest intraday gain in about a year. And like you mentioned, more importantly, it reached an all-time high today. And the clothing retailer is really gaining today because it raised its annual revenue outlook to a range of between $2.67 and $2.69 billion for the year. That's exceeding analyst expectations. The same thing could be said for its fourth quarter revenue outlook and the third quarter adjusted earnings it reported after the bell last night. That's all coming ahead of what analysts were expecting, and it's been getting a good reaction from the analyst community, coming with a few price target increases there. So the story around Aritzia right now is that it's really carrying that momentum from last year as it expands into the U.S. market, adding on to its U.S. footprint by opening new stores in New York and Chicago. In recent years, the retailer really grappled with some quarters of weaker demand and piling up inventory as some of the styles just weren't grabbing consumer interest as analysts hoped that they would. So consumers were also just dialing back spending in general as the cost of everything was rising. So that added to some of the headwinds there. After a sluggish 2023 for the stock, last year really marked a rebound as the company planned more store openings and said it expected an improved product assortment for spring 2024, and that was all in the face of what they called a mixed consumer spending environment. So it really has been a turnaround story for Aritzia, and it's really continuing to gain that momentum over the past few quarters, and that's really being reflected in the share price today there, Andy.
Tilray moved into booze, diversifying away from cannabis, or they do both products now, but the drinks industry is suffering. Constellation Brands disappointed investors again today. Tell us about Tilray. What's going on there?
Yeah, maybe it's dry January, or maybe it's just a secular change in the company there. But yeah, Tilray shares really having a bad day here. They fell as much as 14%, which was the biggest drop since November, and it was the worst performer on the TSX today. So that's because the cannabis company, which, as you mentioned, diversified into booze, reported its second quarter results today with its net revenue of $211 million, falling short of what analysts were expecting. Now, that revenue line fell short in pretty much all of its segments, like cannabis, distribution, alcoholic beverages. The wellness segment was the only one that kind of came in line, just slightly exceeding expectations there. So Tilray shares, this really isn't anything new. They've been under pressure for a while now, and management is gearing its focus towards diversifying. Over the past few years, they've made some acquisitions in the craft beer space, but that strategy so far hasn't really been gaining a lot of traction with investors, and you can see that with the slide over the past few years on the stock there, Andy.
Yeah, it's interesting as well. The Atlantic in the current issue has an incredible piece, focused mostly on the United States, about this huge shift in which people are spending far more time at home. I know it really peaked during COVID, but people are abandoning community activities, they're not going to church, and they're just staying home and looking at their screens. And so that's probably not good. It's certainly not good for out-of-home alcohol consumption. It's actually pretty chilling, and it's... I hate small talk with strangers, but they did a study of people on a train, and they found out, I think it was a rigorous study, they found if you do chat with somebody on a train, you actually, a stranger, for a while, you do feel better. But I tend to...
Right, it's like a little social dopamine hit there.
Yeah, I tend to just bury myself in my book. But in any case, yeah, I've got to, yeah. Anyway, Stephanie, thanks very much indeed. Have a great weekend. Bloomberg Stephanie Hughes.
Thank you, you too.